This video is a historical reconstruction created with AI, based on records from the time, developed for educational and narrative purposes.
Did you know the Titanic's true heart wasn't surrounded by luxury, but buried deep below, where steam and steel worked without rest? In 1912, the engine room kept pistons, pumps, and dynamos running non-stop, supplying light and power to the entire ship. When the collision happened, the first warnings didn't come from the decks above, but from trembling gauges and unfamiliar vibrations. What happened down there helps explain why, for some, there was almost no way back. Before we enter this maze of steel, like the video, subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Together, let's uncover what really happened inside the Titanic's engine room. The engine room was the Titanic's vital core. 3 massive reciprocating engines converted steam into constant motion, turning shafts that drove the ship forward. Pumps, dynamos, and valves worked in perfect synchronization. Every mechanical heartbeat delivered light, heat, and power to the decks above. The engine room was not a single hall, but a series of stacked levels. Narrow platforms, steep ladders, and technical passageways connected engines, boilers, and pumps. Each route served efficiency, not evacuation. In an emergency, this design turned the space into a true labyrinth of steel. The Titanic ran on relentless manual labor. Firemen fed the furnaces without pause, keeping steam pressure within strict limits. The heat was brutal. The air was heavy. The effort never stopped. Long shifts ensured the boilers never cooled, sustaining the rhythm of the machines above. The engine room operated under rigid discipline. Pressure and temperature were constantly checked through gauges and manual valves. Communication relied on gestures and visual signals, cutting through the deafening noise. Every preventive adjustment avoided failures that could cripple the entire ship. Engineers felt the ship through the machines. Subtle changes in shaft vibration, piston rhythm, and steam response revealed how the hull was cutting through the ocean. Without seeing the outside world, the engine room told the story of the Titanic's progress across the Atlantic. As night deepened, shifts rotated. Fatigue was visible, but routine remained unchanged. The work continued at the same pace, driven by habit and discipline. Nothing at that moment suggested that normalcy was about to be shattered. Suddenly, the vibration changed. It wasn't a violent jolt, but a strange tremor, different from anything known. The sound of the machinery shifted, and engineers immediately turned their attention to the instruments and the surrounding structure. Moments after the tremor, the instruments reacted. Needles swung beyond normal ranges. Valves responded with hesitation. Precise adjustments became necessary to maintain steam pressure. Every second demanded absolute focus to prevent a cascading failure. Inside the Titanic's engine room, the collision translated into technical data. Auxiliary pumps were activated to contain early flooding, while engineers assessed unusual structural vibrations. The steel still held, but something had changed. For the first time, there was suspicion of damage beyond a routine navigational anomaly. With the damage confirmed, priorities inside the Titanic's engine room became clear: keep power and lighting flowing to the rest of the ship. That decision allowed operations on the upper decks to continue, even as danger increased below. If you want to understand how this choice shaped everything that followed, stay until the end and subscribe to the channel. In the Titanic's lowest levels, water finally became visible. It first appeared in the lower compartments, slowly spreading across the steel floor. The contrast was extreme, hot steam from the pipes meeting the icy waters of the North Atlantic. The pumps still worked, but the advance suggested a problem far greater than a localized leak. As the water advanced, the Titanic's internal routes began to change. Steep ladders turned slippery. Technical corridors became difficult to cross. The engine room was designed for operational efficiency, not evacuation. Every lost foot reduced the remaining options for those still working below. Even as water continued to rise, work in the Titanic's engine room did not stop. Orders were relayed through quick gestures and focused glances, cutting through the constant roar. The priority remained unchanged. Keep the systems running as long as possible. Every action carried growing risk. While the Titanic's lower levels became increasingly dangerous, electrical power continued to flow. Steam-driven dynamos kept lights on, systems active, and communications running above. Few passengers realized that below them, the engine room was operating under rapidly worsening conditions. The mix of scalding steam and freezing water turned the Titanic's engine room into an extreme environment. Visibility dropped fast. The air grew heavy to breathe. Physical effort intensified as men moved carefully through flooded areas, keeping systems alive under increasingly hostile conditions. After long minutes of non-stop effort, fatigue became unmistakable in the Titanic's engine room. Movements slowed, decisions demanded greater concentration, the environment exacted its physical toll. Still, the work continued. Every man knew his limits, but the need to keep the ship running outweighed them. Inside the RMS Titanic's engine room, some compartments became unusable. Water rose too quickly in specific areas, forcing tactical withdrawals. Pumps still ran, but no longer reached every section. Full control fractured piece by piece as the ship moved toward an irreversible state. Inside the Titanic, electrical power began failing unevenly. Lights flickered on the lower levels as water approached the dynamos. Shadows stretched across wet steel. Reflections danced unpredictably. The engine room still supplied power, but no longer in a stable, continuous flow. The men in the engine room sensed the change before they saw it. On the Titanic, the constant sound of machinery began to lose its rhythm. Pistons weakened. Metallic echoes grew farther apart. For those who knew the space, the partial silence was a clear sign. The ship's heart was starting to fail. Inside the Titanic, escape routes from the engine room became nearly impossible. Water blocked lower ladders, leaving only long vertical climbs. With the ship already listing, every step upward grew harder. The path out still existed, but it was slipping farther away from those still on duty. In the RMS Titanic's engine room, systems now ran at bare minimum. Steam pressure dropped. Dynamos lost stability. Control became fragile. There was still motion, still power, but only enough to keep the ship alive for a few more minutes. The technical limit had been reached. Inside the RMS Titanic's engine room, power began failing for good. Brief blackouts plunged entire compartments into darkness, followed by short returns of light. Handheld lanterns cut through steam and reflected off rising water. The shifting light and shadow disoriented every movement deep within the ship. The sound that once defined the Titanic's engine room began to fade. Gears weakened, pistons slowed. The constant roar gave way to stretches of silence. Each partial stop marked the end of a system. The ship's mechanical heart didn't fail at once. It weakened gradually, beat by beat. Inside the RMS Titanic's engine room, motion stopped completely. Gears froze. Pistons fell silent. The last trace of power disappeared. Water claimed the space once filled with moving steel. The ship's mechanical heart had stopped for good, its function complete after reaching its absolute limit. When the Titanic finally sank, the engine room was already silent. North Atlantic water filled every level, sealing corridors, platforms, and engines. The ship that symbolized modern engineering vanished beneath the surface. What remained was a flooded interior, preserved in darkness and cold. Today, the remains of the Titanic rest on the ocean floor. The engine room lies silent, wrapped in darkness and crushing pressure. The sacrifice of the men who kept the ship alive until the end went unseen by passengers, but it was decisive. In 1912, far from luxury, they ensured the Titanic functioned until its final possible moment.